of that guy, and I never even thought about it like that. That if I had intersected with this cousin of mine who happened to be adventurous for the place that we lived, that I'd never even be sitting in this room talking to you. You know, who knows what I would have done? Join the military. It just happens to be stuff that changes your life without you even realizing it. You know, when that moment happens, you start becoming interested in it. And you know, it's like consumer societies. You start to consume your one thing, which is like this particular slice of music or whatever, and it spirals downward from there to the vortex of this crap. Pro Tools. What happened? I don't want to do this anymore. What do you want to do? That.
Well, I guess when I was maybe 14 or 12 or 13 or 15, my brother and I just listened to Woody Guthrie records mostly, and then records that my parents had, Irish music, Clancy Brothers records and stuff like that. So I'd just sit around my room singing about the Dust Bowl and stuff, which I thought was pretty much about as good as it was ever going to be, and I was happy enough doing that. And then one day my brother brought home this Dead Boys record. It was called Young, Loud, and Snotty was the title of the record. It was a pivotal moment, a revelation. Their whole demeanor on the cover of the record was really, really appealing. Real ugly, and seemed to have a lot of bad skin and stuff, and everything that sort of would have naturally drawn me towards that at that time. In some ways, like, if you grew up in the 1970s, then and you had the opportunity to listen to a lot of AM and FM radio at that time, then it's almost like someone who was spanked a lot as a child, and then when you get older, you start to think, well, that happened to me, and and if I hadn't been abused in that way, then I wouldn't have emerged to be, what I am today. So I almost want to force. I mean, I can almost imagine beating my own child in the way that I was. I can imagine how those kind of cycles, the cycle of abuse. I think I lost my thread. I just wanted to talk about the Dead Boys record, I guess, more.
I had a very good friend named and a piano player, Clovis Bardot, who back in Waukegan we had a R&B band together. So he asked me to come to a rehearsal with Emilio Cruz up here on North Avenue. He had a loft up there, and he was an artist and a musician. And I said, Clovis, baby, what type of thing is this going to be? Well, he said, well, you'll fit in. It's going to be kind of free. And just come and just check it out. As a result of that, we had regular rehearsals and jamming, and from there, Emilio knew Malachi Favors and Don Moyer and Ornette Coleman, all the cats. It was a perfect spot, for my introduction into the scene here, because Emilio knew everybody. So one day, Fred Anderson came up. He introduced himself and came up and jammed. After the rehearsal, he told me, we was talking downstairs on the streets, and he said, man, you got to remember one thing. He said, all you have to do is keep on playing, forget about any type of fame or becoming rich, you know. Just always practice all the time. Just continue practicing and keep your health together, and that's fame in itself. You know, I found out that Fred was really, as everybody knows in Chicago who knows about jazz, Fred is very well grounded. You know, and like in retrospect, the Velvet Lounge has never closed up. He's never had to stop the music because lack of funds. He always managed to keep on going. What Fred taught me in time, if you really be responsible, and you have to keep rehearsing, if you really be responsible, in time things will happen if you keep yourself together. He said you're going to always get an opportunity to do things if you're ready. Now, if you're not ready, you're not going to be able to do it anyway. You always talk to the cats, you know, keeping their head on right, you know, making sure you don't fantasize. He said, hold your job if you can, because, you know, ain't nobody out here gonna pay your rent but you. That's gonna be your problem if you don't have your rent. So keep your day gig unless something really goes good. And in retrospect, you know, he's always kept his, always made sure he made his way. He kept that club going. And for a long time, he wasn't traveling for years, you know, but now, since he's got in a position to travel, as we all know, he travels all over the world, and he's just playing with everybody. And most of the things I'm doing in Chicago has a basis with my stay with the great Fred Anderson. You know, so I would like to dedicate this interview to Fred and give him homage, because he is the master. He is the master blaster. He turns July into June, and he tells leap years to jump over the moon. So thank you, Fred, and God bless you, my brother. He's a bad mamma jamma.
Do I need to go over the?
I pretty much remember.
Yeah.
I mean, was it just something or someone that inspired you and kind of makes you keep doing this?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's rolling whenever you're ready.
Okay. I mean, Fred Anderson, he kind of embodies that.
Let me start one more time, because I think
Okay.
I was still talking.
Yeah. Fred Anderson kind of embodies that for me. I mean, he's someone who's in his 70s who's still, you know, practices every day, still developing, and you just hear it in the music he plays. And I hear it kind of almost every time I've heard him play. But I remember hearing him with Hamid and Fred Hopkins, and that show, you know, completely just blew my mind. I was like, I don't know, 24. And then when you talk to him, kind of what he embodies, you know, he's like, it's just the work you put in, and he's devoted his life to it, and he kind of has a unique sound and voice. Spends, I think, a lot of time just on all the nuances of how the phrase comes out, how the rhythms are articulated, you know, so that he can, you know, just play with so many different combinations and always find new things in it, but have, it's not just an experiment, it's fully realized, you know, because of all the work he's put in. He hears a new idea and he can execute it, and, you know, and then more ideas keep flowing. You know, you see him and you see it's really a lifelong thing. You know, he's playing. I mean, I've only heard him, what, like 7 or 8 years, but he's playing as hard now as he was then, you know. He's not taking a break in his older years. He's constantly pushing, and, you know, that's amazing. You know, you can't half-step with Fred either, you know. I've seen people try, and yeah, it's not pretty. He's not on a soapbox about it. He's not, you know. I mean, it's the focus of his life. It seems like that, just that simple. So it's totally unpretentious. It's totally, you know. And that shows up in the music. The work shows up. The life he lives shows up. So, you know, what can you say? You just gotta give it up to that. really.
This was back in, right after the war, at the Sky. He told me, he says, it's a guy named Charlie Parker, man. He said, he's got a record out called Now's the Time. So I said, yeah. Then I remembered my people used to play these records at home, dance like they used to dance and party off of them, So I went home and tried to find this one particular record by Charlie Parker. And I found one, all the rest of them was broke. And the name of it was Hootie's Blues, where he was playing with Jay McShann. I've been on it ever since, As I listen to him now, his music still fascinates me because as I listen to him, I can always hear he's a very complex person, and especially musically, I mean, all of the stuff that I heard was on the records. They was in the studios, and it was the final product, the final thing. They did 4 or 5 takes. They would take the best take and they would put it out, But then I heard some things that would made him real, real human, like he was making a lot of. He was playing good, he was playing bad, but it was always good, His bad was good, and I learned a lot about that. You just have to keep on trying things, and he had a lot of courage. He tried a lot of different things, He inspired a whole lot of people in the neighborhood. Everybody knew about him around, All the people, they knew about him, and they knew about Dexter Gordon, they knew about Lester Young. So it was really a thing that was just sort of like, we were just raised up around the music, and it was on the jukeboxes. Every place you go, you heard the music on the jukebox. I mean, these are people, they wasn't musicians, they were just people just was walking around the street, but they loved him, And I can remember when he died, all up north, Wilmette, Winnetka, and all them places, we would have somebody would write, "Bird Lives," and I found out that was probably all over the country. They were saying "Bird Lives," but I remember that very, very well in my mind,
Well, let's see. The record that I think lately has influenced me the most, the thing that I think about all the time, that I always want to listen to, is Joni Mitchell, Ladies of the Canyon. It's just the flow of the songs and just everything about it. The instrumentation, the arrangements. Most of the songs are just guitar or just keyboards, just piano and her singing and some backing vocals. It's like, that's so beautiful, so epic in so many ways. It's so simple as well. All the songs that are on that record are just great. And the cover is like her art. Like the kind of partial line drawings with a little bit of color here and there, It's very, very simple. Like white background with a little bit of pen and ink stuff with a couple splashes of color. Like her vocal harmonies and the little things that she does, are so different from a lot of what you hear. It's very, very inspiring to me just to think about simplicity in arranging, because so many times, I don't know, like I always think of these things that are perhaps a little bit too much, and just, like in their entirety, but maybe just a little hint of something or just a little touch of something can add so much more than having something more major.
My name's Kel Johansson. I play guitar in a band called the Urinals, and we started back in about 1978. My story is about a set we played in 1981 with a guy named Rocky Erickson. I'm not sure where the call came in from, but one day the bass player showed up at rehearsal and said, "We've got a gig at the Whiskey with Rocky Erickson," and it was 2 shows in one night. We'd never played the Whiskey. We'd never done 2 shows in one night. And it was the record release party for his album called The Evil One. We real excited. I mean, we were peeing our pants. We'd never done anything that big before. We did our first set, and you know, all our friends were there. We're excited, playing the whiskey, and it went pretty well. After that, I went down on the floor and got right up against the stage to watch Rocky's first set. His band looked kind of more like cowboys than they did punk rockers, and I was wondering how the crowd was going to take it. I thought, you know, this guy doesn't fit into, you know, the look of the bands that usually play around Los Angeles, but people went nuts. They loved him. So I noticed he started doing his lead, and he didn't change anything on his guitar or on his amp, but he'd go back and forth between rhythm parts and lead parts, and the sound would change. So I was looking around trying to figure out what it was. I started looking on the floor. I saw a little stomp box, and I figured, oh, okay, he's hitting the stomp box, and he's changing his sound from lead to rhythm. Well, the next time a song came up where he had that break, I didn't see him move, and the sound changed. So then I started watching, and the lead guitar player that was playing with him, he'd move his big cowboy boot up, pivot it over, hit the button, and then when Rocky was done, he'd hit it again. So Rocky didn't have to do anything but just play. So it was towards the end of the set, and I don't remember what song it was, but you could tell by the music and the body language of the band that he was going to go into another lead. And so I watched the foot pivoted over and pushed the button for Rocky, and he sailed off into this lead guitar part. It seemed like the solo should be finished. The band was kind of looking at each other, waiting to come back into the vocal part, but Rocky was still kind of going, he was having fun. So they did another cycle. He finished that cycle of the solo, and then the band started looking at each other, waiting to come back in to the top of the song. And Rocky had backed away from the mic and backed away from the foot pedal, and he just had this look on his face like he was, I don't know what's going on, but it's great. And he kept playing this solo like he was surprised it was coming out of him. So I'm looking around the audience, they're going nuts. I look up at the guys on the stage, I figure they're going to be pissed that, you know, this nutballs keep going and going and going on the solo. They're looking at each other laughing. It didn't seem like they're laughing at him because he was an idiot, but it was more like you never know when lightning's going to strike, and this is the time when it hit him. He's sailing and having this great time, and they just follow behind him. So after the third time through the solo, he walked up towards the mic, the foot came over, pressed the button, and they finished the song. It was just a really strange moment to be sitting at the edge of the stage without anybody between me and the rest of the band. We were getting ready to come down and do our second set, and that same stairwell that we saw him come down earlier comes Stu Cook, bass player for Creedence. And I didn't realize at the time he was the guy that had produced the new album. And so Creedence was one of my favorite bands growing up. He looked like he was just off the Cosmos Factory album cover. He looked just like that. Came down the stairs and said hi and talked to us for a few minutes. And I just felt like this set can't get any better. This evening can't get any greater. So we walked on stage with this buzz going through us. We came to a song on our set that was almost finished, but not quite, called Presence of Mind. We never really had an ending for it. It was a strong song, but never finished. We came to that song, started it our usual way, and then as we came to the end of the song, for some reason, maybe it was seeing Rocky and his guitar playing, or meeting Stu Cook, or just being in this environment, a switch went off in me. And so I started playing the song differently. I have no idea why. I started playing different chords, I started playing different rhythms, and it was pulling in tension with the rest of the band. And they're kind of looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and they're pulling on their rhythm, and I'm pulling on my rhythm, and their chords and my chords. And all of a sudden, this song, which had just been kind of this linear short song, started stretching out and mutating into something completely different. I don't know why, but we were able to figure out what the other was going to do, and we were able to finish the song and come back in at the same time. Because we were able to kind of write the end of this song, when we went into the studio a couple weeks later, someone had recorded the set off the board, and we were able to use that version of the song as this blueprint for what we're going to do in the studio. We tracked the song Presence of Mind with that ending and structure to it. That was virtually written on the stage of the Whiskey, and that ended up being one of our signature songs, and our first single is the band 100 Flowers. And so every time we played that song, or I think about Rocky, I think about how those two elements intersected that night on the stage of the Whiskey. I don't know whether it was shaking his hand and some current went through me, or it was something being on that stage that triggered that ending to that song that changed it forever for us. I think last month was Rocky's birthday, so happy birthday, Rocky. Happy birthday, Thrill Jockey, and I hope you have another 10 years of success.
Actually, what maybe made me to create music was maybe the fight against this anti-music establishment, which my parents also belonged to. I mean, I grew up in a very poor, middle, upper class area near, I don't know, somewhere in Switzerland. and it was really hard to get the money to afford a guitar, for instance. And there was like some kind of guitar, people who steal guitars and sell very cheap. So I got a very cheap guitar out of styropor, you know, styropor, styropor, where you fix roofs with. They build guitar with that. But it was like you couldn't put strings on, because as soon as you put a string on, it breaks, because the material was really. I didn't play really guitars. I had just 3 strings, because 6 strings made the whole thing like collapse. And yeah, the amp was like old radios, like, you know, this with tubes. And me and my friends, we went around the houses to get old radios. And we said we collected for old people, poor people. And maybe the experience which made me to be really into electric music was like when I tried to remove something inside the radio, and I got a really extreme electric shock. And I still have the haircut from that and the whole design. I thought maybe it's a good idea to go on with this kind of, yeah, electric music idea. Yeah. What was the question?